The Cosford Incident, you dubbed it the most compelling case of your career. Why was it the most compelling case of your career?
I think for a number of reasons. Firstly, it wasn't just a flash and then it's gone. This was a wave of sightings that took place over a period of about, I think, 8 hours. No, pardon me, 6 hours, approximately 6 hours. Secondly, it involved multiple different locations all around the UK, but many of the witnesses were police and military personnel, and in particular, two Air Force bases in the Midlands, Cosford and Shawbury. Cosford, for some reason, got to name this incident. I think I'd be a little annoyed if I was Shawbury, because actually the Shawbury sighting was a little bit more spectacular, but Cosford had more witnesses. So, and thinking back, I think I was probably the one that named it. So I maybe I slipped up there. So apologies, everyone at RAF Shawbury. But lots of the reports involved huge triangular shaped craft, which seemed to be capable of moving from a very slow speed or a hover to very high Mach speeds in an instant with no sonic boom, which again it's one of what Lou Elizondo, who is a U.S. intelligence officer who's investigated UAP. He's dubbed this one of the five observables. This rapid acceleration with no sonic boom, and we saw that in the Cosford incident long before term the five observables was coined. So we had that. We had a patrol of Royal Air Force police officers saw it at RAF Cosford. The meteorological officer saw it at RAF Shawbury. He saw a narrow beam of light come down at the ground, tracking backwards and forwards. He heard an unpleasant low-frequency humming sound that he said he could feel reverberating through his body as well as hear it. I've heard that from some of the other witnesses. And this was, I mean, when I talked to this last witness that I'm talking about, he said to me the following morning when I interviewed him, he said, Nick, I've been in the Air Force 8 years. I see and hear fast jets, attack helicopters, whatever, almost every day. It's kind of like my job. He said, I've never seen anything like this before in my life. And it clearly unnerved him and unnerved a number of the other police and military witnesses. And there's a declassified file on it at the National Archives, which I opened, and so people can follow some of the story in there. And there've been a couple of TV documentaries about it. Really, really interesting case. And of course, there's not much middle ground with a sighting like that. We found a cluster of sightings at about 1:10 in the morning were attributable to the re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere of a Russian rocket. But there was one other really spooky thing about this case, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it at first. I realized that at the back of my mind while I was doing the investigation, I thought there's something odd about the date. Something, I couldn't quite figure it. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, after the investigation had wound down, after the diplomatic aspects of this had wound down, because we'd been talking to the US government about this, firstly, to check that they weren't testing some sort of prototype aircraft, but secondly, because they were having sightings of their own and they were asking us about our sightings. But when everything wound down, I realized what it was. And it was the fact that these sightings happened late on March 30th and in the early hours of March 31st, 1993. Well, on that exact same night, 3 years earlier, a very similar UFO had entered Belgian airspace, had been tracked on Belgian national radar and on the NATO integrated radar network. The Belgians had actually scrambled two F-16 fighters to intercept this craft. They'd locked onto it with their airborne radars. And yeah, as I say, it was only only a little later that I realized, wow, it's the exact same night of the year, but 3 years on. What did that mean? We didn't know, but it was interesting. In all my defense career, I was taught, don't believe in coincidences. Look for those join the dots.
Yes, it's an unbelievably compelling case. So all these years later now, what is the best guess for what was going on there, or were you just unable to really come to any sort of assumption?
Really unknown. I mean, it's like it's kind of like it's a binary thing, like a crime in a police file. It's either solved or it's not. If it's solved, it resolves itself into one of a number of different things: aircraft lights, weather balloons, meteors, satellites, Chinese lanterns, hoax, psychological delusion, sensor error, whatever it might be. But if it's unknown, it's unknown. Might it be extraterrestrial? Yeah, it might. But we can't prove that. We don't have a definitive smoking gun. I know conspiracy theorists say that we're hiding these things in an Air Force hangar somewhere. If they are, I suspect that's in the United States and that they didn't tell us Brits. But no, unknown means unknown. Yeah, you can apply Occam's razor and say again, sure, it's more likely that it was a secret prototype aircraft, um, or drone than an extraterrestrial spacecraft, but we don't know that. And we obviously did check very carefully, even if you're not read into a specific black project, we know what we've got. And somebody can have a quiet word and say, look, can't read you into the program, but no need to, look into that one, look the other way, old chap. And of course, you would. And you could say, well, but not if it's Russian or Chinese. But again, and I can't go into too much details, but obviously through our intelligence operations, we've got a pretty good idea of what any adversary has, what the cutting edge of their technology is in terms of aerospace, for example.